Even Russian pro-war channels are no longer hiding their panic over Starlink failures. Across Russian military Telegram groups, there is a wave of reports about mass satellite internet outages along the front line. For many units, drone coordination and real-time data all depended on this connection. The complaints sound the same from different sectors: no internet, no signal, no command control. Some openly admit that field coordination has been effectively disrupted. In a few cases, assault operations were reportedly slowed down or paused. The problem is painful for them because there is no equal backup system ready to replace it. Right now, their own tech chats are full of urgent messages, people searching for workarounds and ways to bypass the blocks. The partisan movement, outages, also says its sources inside Russian units report the same pattern: communications breaking down and coordination suffering. Earlier, Ukrainian officials confirmed cooperation with SpaceX to block unregistered terminals and move the system to a verified whitelist. Elon Musk has also said that measures against unauthorized Russian use appear to be working. We still don't have a full independent technical picture, but judging by the tone of the Russian war bloggers, this is not a minor inconvenience for them. 2026 could become a difficult year for Russia. The coming year may bring serious military and economic strain for the aggressor country, according to retired Lieutenant General Igor Romanenko, who says battlefield losses, sanctions pressure, and long-range Ukrainian strikes are starting to change Moscow's position. Speaking on Radio NV, Romanenko said Russia's recent battlefield performance shows growing limits. Over December and January, Russian forces captured roughly 250 square kilometers of territory, but at a very high cost, about 35,000 personal losses. That figure is close to the number of new troops Russia is currently able to send to the front each month. In earlier periods of 2025, they were able to feed 40,000 to 60,000 troops monthly into the war effort and build reserves from the difference. Now that gap is gone. According to Romanenko, Russia had planned to form 40 new divisions, but managed to build only 7. And those are already being deployed in active combat areas such as Pokrovsk, Gulaypole, and Kupiansk, instead of being kept as strategic reserves. Romanenko also pointed to mounting external pressure. Western sanctions and Ukraine's expanding long-range strike campaign inside Russian territory are adding stress not only to the civilian economy, but also to the defense industry. And for the first time in 4 years of war, we are seeing decline trends inside parts of Russia's military-industrial sector. He added that Russian air attack capacity also appears reduced. Where earlier mass strikes sometimes involved 500 to 700 aerial attacks assets, recent waves have dropped to around 250. He links this to shortages in air attack systems, air defense missiles, and radar capabilities. Indian company Reliance Industries has bought Venezuelan oil for the first time since mid-2025. Bloomberg reports this, citing market sources. The deal covers one tanker cargo of about 2 million barrels. It is the first such purchase after a long break. Experts say the reason is clear. India is diversifying its oil supplies and reducing dependency risks. Venezuelan crude is slowly returning to global trade after recent U.S. policy moves around Venezuela's energy sector. In the past, India was one of the main buyers of Venezuelan oil, taking roughly a quarter of its exports. Major global traders have also recently been offering Venezuelan cargoes to buyers in both India and China. At the same time, Washington keeps urging New Delhi to cut Russian oil imports, but India has not formally confirmed a full stop. The European Union is increasingly looking at Turkey as a key partner in the post-war security setup around Ukraine. Politico reports that Brussels sees Ankara as a potential peacekeeper, mediator, and security player in the Black Sea region. Turkey has NATO's second-largest army, controls the Bosphorus, and played a crucial role in the Black Sea grain deal. In short, many in the EU now say stability after the war will be very hard without Turkey. But there is another side of the story. Turkey runs a very pragmatic Russia policy and in practice sits on two chairs. It is a NATO member and partner of Ukraine. Yet it also keeps broad trade and financial ties with Moscow. Western officials and analysts have repeatedly warned that some Russian businesses has used Turkish routes and channels to soften the impact of sanctions. There is also the grain issue. Ukrainian authorities and international investigations have documented Russia exporting grain taken from occupied Ukrainian territories. Turkish officials previously admitted that verifying the true origin of some shipments is technically difficult when Russian paperwork is used. That creates a real risk that stolen Ukrainian grain enters international markets. So the picture is mixed. For the EU, Turkey is a strategically important partner for Ukraine's post-war security. At the same time, Ankara is clearly playing its own game and protecting its own interests first. Train cars stuffed with cash from Moscow. This is how The Telegraph describes a covert Russian scheme to move billions in banknotes to Iran to keep the regime afloat and bypass Western sanctions. According to the report, based on leaked financial documents, Russia used a sanctioned state-linked bank, Pромsvязьbank, to organize at least one major cash shipment in August 28, shortly after tough US sanctions were reimposed on Tehran. One documented transfer involved more than 100 kilograms of banknotes worth over $50 million. The route was unusual and clearly designed to avoid scrutiny. The cash was reportedly moved by rail to Astrakhan, then ships across the Caspian Sea, and from there sent onward by the train to Tehran. Based on weight and declared value, investigators believe the cargo likely consisted of high-denomination euro notes, even though the sums were recorded in US dollars. The publication argues this points to a much deeper financial and military relationship between Moscow and Tehran than publicly admitted. Moving physical cash instead of using the banking system helps avoid sanctions, controls, and transaction tracking. Security analysts cited in the report say the money may have been used to pay for weapon systems, missiles component, or support for Iranian security structures. The story gains new relevance now as Iran has become one of Russia's key suppliers of attack drones used in a war against Ukraine. Ukrainian defense experts also know that Russia is increasingly dependent on external arms and ammunition suppliers, including Iran and North Korea, because domestic production cannot fully meet battlefield demand. This paints a picture not of a self-sufficient war machine, but of a war effort running on imported firepower. China has publicly called on the United States to return to nuclear stability talks with Russia after the expiration of the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty. The statement came from Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian. Beijing says the two largest nuclear powers should get back to the table and agree on limits again, warning that without caps and dialogue, global risk will grow. China's position is careful as usual. It is not offering itself as a party to the talks and stresses that its nuclear arsenal is much smaller than those of the US and Russia. Because of that, Beijing says it sees no reason to join a trilateral disarmament format. In simple terms, it does not want to get pulled in. But this is hardly just a neutral peace message. China is pushing the theme of a strategic stability exactly at the moment when the old arms control architecture is falling apart. Without a valid US-Russia treaty in force for the first time in decades, there are no formal limits on deployed strategic warheads and delivery systems in the international security community. This is often described as a dangerous rules vacuum. When there are no limits and no verification tools, trust drops and stockpile competition begins. Another important detail is that China has been actively modernizing its own nuclear forces in recent years, while publicly sticking for the formula of minimum necessary deterrence. The contrast is often seen by analysts as a Chinese version of double standards. US Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in Milan for the Winter Olympic Games with an unusual unusual large security and logistics footprint. According to German outlet Bild, the trip involved 14 aircraft and around 100 cars. Reports say one aircraft carried food supplies, 2 transported armored vehicles, and the remaining flights brought staff, security teams, and official support personnel. The US delegation is based at the Sheraton Hotel, which has been fully closed to outside visitors. A special covered security structure was installed at the entrance for the vice presidential motorcade, a measure typically reserved for top risk officials. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is also part of the Milan visit. The delegation is expected to attend the Winter Olympics opening ceremony at San Siro Stadium. At the same time, one public appearance stood out as less restricted. Vance attended the US-Czech women's hockey game with his family without a full spectator clearance or complete lockdown of the arena. That's all for now. For more content, please subscribe.